Hey, this is Alex Quarterbard. Welcome. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Welcome to this tutorial. Today's tutorial is actually by the request of, and excuse me if I completely butcher your name, Ant Piskovic and Flor Gilini. They requested and asked if I could do a tutorial on how to add textures or how to add materials. So to the last tutorial that I did on making a gear. So I'm going to be doing just that, showing you how to make textures, how to add textures to objects. And also thank you to my man Victor over here. He suggested that I use a screencast add-on. You know, my friend, I was actually recording and then I saw your tutorial and I had to redo my whole recording because I saw this. I'm like, you know what? He's right. I should have that. So let's get started, and thanks again to all three of you for your comments. Appreciate you all. Before we do, however, today's quote of the day is, every day or every new day is a chance to change your life. Now think about that. Most people live every day the same as the last. You see, every single day, nothing changes in between their day. Every day is the same. Most people live 40 years once instead of living 40 years 40 times. It's kind of like Groundhog Day if you've seen that movie, except most people unfortunately don't make any improvements. You know, we have a new opportunity every single day, so take advantage of it. All right, let's get started. Right here, I have the gear from my last tutorial, and if you'd like to follow along with me exactly, I'm going to put that link in as an annotation. You can make your gear and follow along. If not, you could use literally any object that you want, and you could skip ahead to, I'll put an annotation right here at what time you could skip ahead to go straight to the texturing part. But if you're following along with me with the gear, with your gear, let's go ahead and do this. All right. So the first thing that we need to do, let's go ahead and hit T to close the tool menu right there. Go to the bottom left corner, left click and drag on this little corner to split the viewport. I'm going to hit N to close both of these. And let's change it from the 3D view to the UV image editor. Alright, so what we need to do is actually we're going to, and some people texturing and materials is a little bit confusing, but basically what we do is we take a 3D object and then we project a 2D image onto that object. But an easier way to do it is actually to take our 3D object and flatten it into a two-dimensional object, and then we project a two-dimensional image onto that two-dimensional representation of our object. That just sounded very complicated the way I explained it. I just realized, but let me show you. Your pants and your clothes and your t-shirts all are three-dimensional when you put them on, but when you look at them, there's seams along the edges, and before they were stitched together, they were actually flat. They were a flat piece of clothing, and whatever images or graphics were put on them was then imprinted onto that flat piece of clothing. So we're going to do the exact same thing with our gear, although it's a much more solid object, to be honest. So hit Tab to go into edit mode, and just like clothing, we're going to be adding seams. So hit Control Tab, go into edge mode, and Alt right click along, Alt Shift right click all along your gear over here. And then hit Control E and mark seam. Forgot one right there. And now you can see that we have a red line, and this is going to be where the gear is cut. Because if we hit A to select everything, and then U and unwrap, and we go to the UV image editor, I'm going to click the X right here, you can see that this looks nothing like a gear. And before these seams, they looked even worse. So let's continue adding some seams. We're going to select all of these right here. So Alt Shift right click. Not that one. We're going to select all the edges. Whoa. All the edges in between the gears. And now for this one, you don't want to Alt Shift right click, otherwise it will select the whole thing. You just want to Shift right click and then get this little guy up here, this one down here, and same thing on the other side. Shift right click, the little one as well right here, and then right click this one and Control E, mark seam. Now we should have seams all along there. One last place we gotta add seams, you guessed it, at the bottom of the gear. This one's easier. Alt Shift right click all along. I need some elevator music for the quiet parts. Or actually it's pretty nice when I don't speak. Alright, Control E, mark seam. And there we have it. Now if we hit A, U, unwrap, it still looks pretty terrible. The reason is because we need to add our array modifier. So go to the modifiers panel. Make sure that you have all your seams. Looks good. And now in object mode, apply the array modifier. Go back into edit mode by hitting tab. A to select everything. U, unwrap. And look at that. That looks pretty good to me. So you can see that now we have our gear that is unwrapped. Although, did forget one seam. Go into the center right here. Alt Shift right click on these right here. Control E, mark seam. A to select everything and unwrap it once again. And there we have it. Alright, now to the texturing part. The part you guys have all been waiting for. So what we want to do is add a new material to our gear. And now we're going to go to the node editor. I know that's a scary place to go. And it is scary when you don't know. I mean, when you first encounter the node editor, it's a little daunting. But I'll guide you guys through. And as you go, you start to learn and it becomes easier. So just click on node editor over here. And hit Shift A, texture, image texture. Click open and go to wherever your texture is. I have it right here. And I will provide the link to that texture in the description. It's a texture from CG Textures. You could get free textures on there once you create an account. It's an awesome site. Or feel free to use a texture of your choice. And drag and drop it into there. Now let's see what this looks like. If we go over here to rendered view, you can see that's completely pitch black. Awesome. Let's add a lamp. Shift A, add lamp, sun. I'll just leave this for now. Let's see what that looks like. Awesome. I mean, it looks like something, but let's make it a whole lot better. Let's pimp our gear out. All right, let's go. Let's go back to our gear. We were on our lamp right there. Let's actually add several different maps to our image. First, before we do that, let's add a glossy shader. So Shift A, shader, glossy. And this glossy, the diffuse is basically, like you can see, it's a matte color. The glossy will add a shine to it. And to connect both of these, we want to add, let me get rid of that. We want to add a shader, mix shader. Boom, boom. And now, connect these two right here. And connects the mix shader by left clicking and dragging into that one. Now you can see that we have a mix of shady. Once we click this one in, there we go. We have a mix of diffuse and glossy. But it's looking kind of terrible still. We could improve this even more. So let's continue. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Photoshop or GIMP. You could use either one you want. I'm going to use Photoshop because honestly, I prefer Photoshop. And I'll be honest with you guys as well. I have a very old version of Photoshop. But you know what? It works. So go to your image, to your texture image, wherever it is. Open it up And what we're going to do is we're going to create a bump map. Now, what is a bump map? Well, a bump map, you can see that right here, it looks kind of flat. And there's no detail, you know, there's no depths, there's no crevices, there's no shadows, there's nothing. It's just kind of a flat image pasted onto our gear. Looks kind of unrealistic. A bump map, what it does is it imitates detail without actually adding the detail. Because if you were to go in here and subdivide this to a point where you're able to add in a lot of detail, it would be terrible because we'd have so much geometry in our mesh that it would completely defeat the purpose of having a simple, easy to work with mesh. So an easy way to do that is a bump map actually allows for you to add that detail without adding the geometry. So the way to do that is we're going to go to image and we're going to convert this to a grayscale. Go to image mode grayscale. And basically what you want is you want your image to be black and white. So in GIMP, same thing, just convert your image to black and white. And now go to image, adjustments, brightness, contrast, and we're going to kick up the contrast quite a bit. So any spot that's black or that's dark will be a crevice or will be a depth, and anything that's white or light will actually be raised or will be a like a valley or a mountain, basically. So anything that's black will be a valley, anything that's white will be a hill or a mountain. That's the best analogy I could come up with on the spot. All right. So something like that works for me. Click OK. File, save as, JPEG. I'm going to save it over my old one, bump. Just name it bump. And now back to Blender. Select your image texture node. Hit Shift D, bring it down. Hit the X key to remove that last texture. Open, and open your bump image that you just created. Now let's Shift A. What we need to do is actually add in a vector and then bump. Click color and bring it into the height. We're going to take the bump map into the glossy normal and into the diffuse normal. Now you can see that now we have a lot more detail added. You can see that it looks like there's bumps and raises and depth to it, even though the mesh is still flat. So that's awesome. I put down the strength to 0.2 as well because at 1 it's a little ridiculous. I mean, you want detail, but that's a little bit over the top. So 0.2. Alright, I had some weird things happening with the computer, but now I'm back. So now what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's on non-color data because it's only using the black and white values on this. And now what we want to do is add a specular map. So the specular map is basically going to be, right now you can see that it's basically very glossy and shiny everywhere because the value that it's using right now is this one right here, meaning 50% of it is diffused and 50% glossy. If you bring this all the way down, it will be completely diffused, and bring it all the way up, it will be completely glossy. I'm going to put this back down to 0.5, but a better way to control this value is actually to use an image texture. So just like our last image texture for the bump, the specular image texture will be anywhere that there's black or darker spots, there will be less or no shininess or no glossiness, and anywhere where there's lighter or white spots will be the most glossy or the most shiny. So I'm actually going to be using the same texture, but if you'd like, you could actually go to adjustments, brightness, contrast, and bump up the contrast even more to give it even more of a variation than the other one. Actually, let's do that. Why not? I'm going to file, save this one. No idea what happened there. I'm going to save this one as my specular map. And now going back to Blender, I'm going to left click on my image texture, Shift D, copy it, hit the X, click open, and go to my specular map. Drag this into the factor right here. And now you can see that whatever was white before is now shiny, and whatever was dark is basically diffused or not shiny. So you can see that it's giving an interesting kind of look to it, actually. A little bit different than I had done in my previous image, but I kind of like the feel it has to it. So if you want, you could even use the image that you had from your last one that you used for the bump map. You could select the bump map and it gives you a slightly different feel because the white and the black values are different. I'm going to keep it on the specular because I find it a little bit interesting, the result that it's given me right here, and I kind of like it. Also, we need to go from color to non-color data. Alright, so there we have it. We now have our gear with textures on it. I'm going to bump up the normal to 0.3, give it a little more detail on there. Now, let's do one thing. Let's go to our UV image editor, hit tab to go into edit mode, and this image, if you use this image that I provided you, it's actually a tileable image. So the reason that it looks so large right now is that it's only using a small percentage of the image, but since this image is tileable, we could actually scale it up. And let's bring up the image so that we could see it here. We could actually scale it up however much we want. Because it's going to be repeating itself. If you have a non-tileable image, it actually won't scale up properly and you'll get some weird artifacts and some weird distortion to it. So now let me actually add some better lighting. I'm going to delete this lamp right here. Hit Shift A. I'm going to add a cylinder and go to New Material, and I'm going to make this a emission material. So what this does, if I go to the rendered viewport, you can see that it emits light. Pretty sweet. I'm going to rotate my gear a little bit by selecting it with the right mouse button and then double tapping the R key. Gives you the pivotal, the wheel rotation where you can rotate it in any direction. So we're going to add that. I'm going to bump up the strength of this to 3. Give it kind of an ominous feel. And now, if I hit Control Alt 0 to position the camera, I don't even have a camera. Let's add a camera. Shift A, camera, Control Alt 0 will actually position your camera in from wherever you're seeing the viewport. So Control Alt 0 on the numpad. If you hit G, middle mouse click, and then move your mouse, you could actually zoom in and out. So now if I hit F12, you can see that it's rendering my image, and unfortunately right now I think I'm on CPU rendering instead of my graphics card for some reason. But you can see now that we have some pretty sweet detail on our gear, and it's looking pretty cool. We have some highlights, some crevices, some detail to our once bland gear, and you can see that it's looking pretty sweet. So hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any requests, let me know in the comments below. Message me, follow me on my Facebook page, Blender Mania. Appreciate you all, my Blender Maniacs, and really happy to have you be a part of this community. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and if you want to continue making some awesome stuff. Once again, this is Alex Cordobard, and wish you all the best. Keep on blending. If you have any projects or cool things that you're working on, share it with me. I'm interested to see what you guys are working on. And remember, every day is a new day. Every hour is a new hour. Make the most of it, my friends. Wish you all the best. And yeah, hope you have an awesome one. One last quick tip. I hate going back after I did my final outro, but I thought this would bring some value to you. If you do not have a tileable image, if you select your gear, you will see that when you unwrap it, the gear is within the image, but you still have a lot of room because this only takes up 1/4 of the image. So if you click on one of the vertices and then hit L, it will select the whole unwrapped part of it, and then you can scale it up and position it on the whole image. It actually doesn't matter that it's overlapping the other ones. You could do the same thing with this. And that way you're making use of the whole texture. How awesome is that? And you could do that same thing with these as well. You know, it's a little more time consuming, so I won't go over that, but wanted to mention it for you because I thought it could help if you do not have a tileable image texture. So I believe that's all, and I'll be cutting it here, so I won't be going back. Hope you have an awesome day. Make the most of it. Love you all. Have a good one. Bye.